Okay, so the ENLIGHT remote command interface is documented in the user guide, which is on the, yeah, we can, okay. Section 4 in the user guide, which is in the Help tab. So basically this explains what we just implemented through some examples that are some blocks in that LabVIEW example, the communication interface, but this explains how to implement it in other code. And then there's a series of Ethernet commands, very much like when you would read and write from the core module itself before ENLIGHT. Now you can read and write to ENLIGHT. And so our first demonstration of that will be with the help command. So if we send to ENLIGHT the help command, it will reply with all of the commands that ENLIGHT supports. And so there's quite a few things that you can do with ENLIGHT here. You can get information about the FPGAs that you've created. You can get information about the sensors, the properties for the sensors, the sensor IDs. You can get the current sensor values. So that, I think, would be a pretty interesting thing. Let's get our sensor IDs. Get sensor IDs. And so now the response there is all of the sensors that we've established during this tutorial. And once we've gotten the sensor IDs, we know what each sensor is, and then we can go ahead and get the sensor values. Okay? So we can see it's responding as a string. And the reason this is so useful is we've already done all of the heavy lifting with ENLIGHT to all of those features that I described, all of that goes into getting robust temperature compensated measurements. And so now what we can do is take the, what would be a favorite way to do this? Programming. Let's do a string to array. So here's our string to a 2D array, create indicator, and now as we create a constant here and a format constant here, constant. Okay, now we see numerically we have those values. And so let's just take the first sensor value. So we're going to take the first row and the first column. And now we can very quickly create our own custom user interface. I'm going to replace this with a chart. Okay. And I will on-auto scale Y. We can set whatever scale and ranges we want. And now I can begin, let's see, immediately branding it Sensomatic 2000. So this is my sensor service company, and I can start using the colors that I want to use and really create my own custom application-specific user interface for my customer. So I'm leveraging ENLIGHT to do all of the data processing that is optically specific and is interrogation system specific and takes care of all of the calibration and all of the temperature compensation and all of those elements, and then I'm able to simply subscribe to those sensor values that are important and present it to my customer in the way that solves their problems. So that's a very basic ground-up example of the ENLIGHT user interface, and then we have a somewhat more established example here that highlights some of those and some additional features. This is implemented using exactly the same open, write, read, and command set that we just demonstrated.
The source for which is all provided.
Correct. All right. And so we're connected. Again, we have a very simple command interface, the same as we just built. We have a get sensor data where I've combined the two the two commands to get sensor IDs and get sensor values. But rather than just operating in a polled condition, we can actually stream data with a buffer from ENLIGHT to our example. And so here now we see full speed data with a real-time timestamp for all of the sensors that we established during this tutorial. So streaming data can be enabled as well. Also, any of the data saving profiles that we established in ENLIGHT, you can remotely browse and extract any of those data files programmatically in LabVIEW or any other language. There are some filters here where we can filter down to a particular month. So let's just look at the things that we've done in, I guess, November, isn't it? In 2010 in November, and we can see all those data files that we created during our tutorial today. And you can also filter on particular file types, such as we only want to look at sensors files. So I'll give it a sensors file star. And now we can extract those data files that we created. So we load that, bring it into the open file, and then we can programmatically open that. This was the first data file that we created today. And so you can programmatically interface with the data files that you've created. You can stream sensor data, and you can implement really any function that the ENLIGHT command set supports. So again, that command set is documented in the user guide and is available on the Help tab of ENLIGHT. And one, I guess, final little interesting trick is when you're creating your own interface using ENLIGHT, you can programmatically decide when to hide or show ENLIGHT completely. So here, by sending the hide ENLIGHT command for my application, you notice that ENLIGHT has been removed from the taskbar. It's been removed from any Alt-Tab operation, and all we're left with is the user interface that I want to present to my customer. When it's time to go back and edit some setup, you can bring that interface back and make it available to the customer.
One of the things I really like about the remote interface is that you can control which data and how often it's streamed, whereas in the interrogators you're limited by setting a data interleave, but that controls all of them. With ENLIGHT, you're able to say, send me this sensor and that sensor and get it every time over a small bandwidth, or you could say, send me 100 sensors, less often, or you can even open up multiple connections to it and receive a couple of sensors very quickly, very often, and then have the other ones coming on a slower to try to manage the bandwidth that you have over a cellular link or a slow internet connection. So it really provides you a lot of flexibility on what data, how often, and just overall what you want to do with it.
One thing I neglected to mention is that when we're doing the sensor streaming, there's sort of a single stream of data where there are packet headers essentially for be it sensor information, alerts information, and so through the single data stream that I established, if we break through any of the where's my alerts? You have to be active for that to happen? I don't think so. Okay. So you see that as we're streaming the sensor data, we're also streaming any information or warnings or alarms that come from the application into in this case, we're capturing them in a historical record. So those can be handled by your application however makes sense.
Yeah, so over a single network connection, you can receive both events from the system, streaming data, and you can also issue other commands to, individual commands to get this or set that or change this, all over a single socket if you need.
Okay, so going back to our outline, I think that we covered everything we wanted to on the remote command interface.